Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Under the gentle glow of the full moon, this story will take us through the hidden corridors of Hogwarts to a place where ancient secrets awaken from their long slumber. Listen closely, let each word guide your imagination through the gates of time, through the shadows of history nearly forgotten. In the stillness of the night, an ancient ritual is revealed once more. A power that was meant to remain sealed has begun to stir. But don't worry, for in every darkness, there is always light. Take a deep breath, close your eyes if you wish, and let this story carry you into one final adventure beneath the moonlight. The night was calm, and the gentle glow of the full moon cast long shadows across the stone corridors of Hogwarts. The castle was quieter than usual, with most students having retreated to their dormitories. But for me and Harry Potter, the night was far from over. We sat in the dimly lit Hogwarts library, surrounded by towering shelves packed with ancient tomes and dusty scrolls. A single candle flickered between us, casting warm, flickering light on the pages of the books we were skimming through. At first, we had come here for a simple reason: to finish our potions essay before Snape decided to take more points from Gryffindor. But as the minutes stretched into hours, our focus drifted away from our assignment and onto the countless mysterious books surrounding us. Harry sighed, running a hand through his messy black hair. I swear, if I have to write one more sentence about the properties of Moonstone, I'm going to lose my mind. I chuckled, flipping another page of an old textbook, but my laughter stopped abruptly as my fingers brushed against something unusual. The page I had just turned revealed a loose parchment tucked between the yellowed pages. It looked ancient, its edges frayed, and the ink faded from time. Curiosity sparked within me as I carefully pulled it out. "What's that?" Harry leaned closer, his green eyes narrowing as he peered at the parchment. "I'm not sure," I murmured, straightening it out on the table. The words, written in an elaborate script, were difficult to decipher at first, but as I read through them, my pulse quickened. The ritual of the full moon. Hidden secrets shall be unveiled to those who dare seek them. 3 sacred artifacts, lost to time, shall reveal the path. Beware the shadows that lurk, for not all wish for the truth to be found. A shiver ran down my spine. There was something eerie about the way the words were phrased, something that made me instinctively glance around as if expecting someone to be watching us. Harry must have felt the same way because he straightened up, alert. "This sounds old," he said carefully. "And dangerous." I nodded. "But it also sounds important." Harry hesitated, but his natural curiosity, the same one that had led him to countless adventures, took over. "Do you think this is real?" I traced my finger over the parchment, noting the faded seal at the bottom. Though time had worn it down, I could still make out the faint outline of the Hogwarts crest. "I think it might be," I admitted. "And if it is, it means there's something hidden in Hogwarts, something that can only be found during the full moon." Harry leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Well, that's convenient. There's a full moon tonight." That realization sent a strange thrill through me. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. It was as if we were meant to find this, as if the castle itself had led us to this moment. But before we could discuss it further, the library's atmosphere shifted. The candlelight flickered violently, as if a strong gust of wind had passed through, though the windows were shut. A whisper, barely audible, echoed between the towering bookshelves. It wasn't the sound of students chatting or the rustling of pages. This was something else, something unnatural. Harry and I froze. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. Harry nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for his wand. "Yeah. We're not alone." We stood up simultaneously, our chairs scraping against the stone floor. The library, once a sanctuary of knowledge, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows. The towering bookshelves, once familiar, now loomed like silent sentinels, watching our every move. We exchanged glances, and without a word, we began moving cautiously between the aisles. The whispering continued, growing fainter and fainter, leading us deeper into the heart of the library. Every step we took seemed to amplify the eerie stillness around us. Then, just as we turned a corner near the restricted section, the whispers stopped. Silence pressed against our ears, thick and suffocating. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs as we hesitated. A sudden thud broke the silence. A book fell from the shelf beside us, landing with a muffled impact on the floor. Both of us jumped, wands raised, eyes scanning the darkness. "What was that?" Harry muttered. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." He stepped forward cautiously, nudging the fallen book with the tip of his shoe. The title, embossed in silver, gleamed faintly in the dim light, Legends of the Moonlit Vale. Another coincidence? I doubted it. Harry bent down, picked up the book, and flipped it open. As soon as he did, a cold gust of wind rushed past us, ruffling the pages, and a single line of text glowed faintly on the parchment. "The path shall be revealed to those who seek under the light of the moon." My breath hitched. That confirmed it. Whatever this ritual was, it was real. And we had just taken the first step toward uncovering its mystery. Harry snapped the book shut and glanced around once more before turning to me. "We should take this to McGonagall." I hesitated. "Do you think she'll tell us the truth?" Harry sighed, tucking the book under his arm. "I don't know. But I do know one thing, whatever this is, it's not just some old story. And if there's even a chance that something dangerous is hidden in Hogwarts, we need to find out." I nodded. He was right. We had uncovered something bigger than we had anticipated, and now there was no turning back. As we exited the library, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The castle walls held secrets older than we could imagine, and tonight, under the full moon, one of those secrets had finally begun to stir. The corridors of Hogwarts were nearly silent as Harry and I made our way toward Professor McGonagall's office. The castle always felt different at night, as though it was holding its breath, waiting. The glow of torches cast long, flickering shadows across the stone walls, and our footsteps echoed with an eerie rhythm. I clutched the old parchment tightly, feeling its ancient texture between my fingers. The words about the ritual of the full moon kept replaying in my mind. What did it mean? And more importantly, why had we been the ones to find it? Harry walked beside me, his face set in quiet determination. The book he had taken from the library, Legends of the Moonlit Vale, was tucked under his arm. Every now and then, he'd glance around, as though expecting something, or someone, to appear from the shadows. The memory of that whispering voice in the library still lingered, making my skin crawl. When we finally reached McGonagall's office, Harry knocked firmly. A few moments later, the door creaked open, revealing the stern but familiar face of our Transfiguration professor. Her sharp eyes flicked between us before she spoke. "Mr. Potter. Mr., your last name. What are you both doing out so late?" Her voice was calm but carried an unmistakable note of authority. Harry shot me a quick glance before stepping forward. "Professor, we found something in the library. Something unusual." McGonagall's expression barely changed, but I could tell she was assessing us carefully. After a moment, she stepped aside, allowing us in. "Come in. And close the door behind you." Her office was just as orderly as always, filled with neatly stacked books and various magical artifacts. A warm fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a comforting glow across the room. As we stepped inside, she gestured toward the chairs in front of her desk. "Sit." We obeyed immediately, and as soon as we did, Harry placed the book on her desk while I unfolded the old parchment and laid it beside it. McGonagall adjusted her glasses and leaned forward, her keen gaze scanning the faded writing. The longer she read, the tighter her lips pressed together. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Where did you find this?" "In the library," I said. "It was hidden inside another book. We didn't go looking for it, it just found us." Harry nodded. And then strange things started happening. We heard whispers, and a book fell off the shelf on its own. And when we picked it up, this text started glowing. He pointed at the Legends of the Moonlit Vale book. McGonagall's brow furrowed as she turned to the book, flipping through its pages with practiced precision. When she reached the section we had seen, she stopped. Her eyes darkened slightly, and for the first time, I saw something in her expression that I rarely saw: worry. She exhaled slowly and leaned back in her chair. "This is no ordinary legend," she said at last. "The ritual of the full moon is real." Harry and I exchanged glances. We had suspected as much, but hearing McGonagall confirm it sent a chill through me. "Professor," I asked carefully, "what exactly does this ritual do?" She hesitated before answering. "The ritual is ancient, far older than Hogwarts itself. It is said to reveal hidden truths, long-buried secrets that cannot be uncovered by ordinary means. Throughout history, very few have attempted it, and even fewer have succeeded. The reason it has been largely forgotten is that it requires 3 powerful artifacts, each tied to the magic of the moon. Without them, the ritual is incomplete." I felt my heart quicken. "And these artifacts, they're still here? In Hogwarts?" McGonagall gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Yes. They were hidden centuries ago to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands." Harry leaned forward, his voice lower now. "And what happens if we find them?" McGonagall sighed, rubbing her temples. "If performed correctly, the ritual could grant knowledge that has been lost to time. However, if done incorrectly, or if interfered with, the consequences could be disastrous." The word disastrous sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Why would someone try to stop it?" I asked. McGonagall's expression darkened further. "Because not all truths are meant to be found. and not everyone wants them revealed. There are forces, both inside and outside Hogwarts, that would rather keep these secrets buried. Harry's jaw tightened. Fenrir Greyback. McGonagall's gaze snapped to him. We haven't seen him, I added quickly. But the parchment mentioned shadows that lurk, and if there's anyone who wouldn't want us uncovering something powerful, it's him. McGonagall was silent for a long time, her fingers lightly tapping against the desk. Then, she stood. Walking over to the fireplace, she stared into the flames as though lost in thought. Finally, she turned back to us. If you truly wish to pursue this, you must understand the risks. This is no school adventure, it is dangerous magic. But if you are determined, then you must act before the night is over. The full moon is at its peak tonight, and the first artifact can only be found under its direct light. Harry and I stood up, adrenaline coursing through us. Where do we start? He asked. McGonagall hesitated once more, then said, the first artifact, the lunar crystal, can only be found in the ruins behind the castle where the original foundations of Hogwarts once stood. It only appears when bathed in the light of the full moon. I swallowed hard. That area was barely explored, and most students avoided it because of its eerie atmosphere. Now, we had to go there in the dead of night, knowing that someone, maybe even Greyback, would try to stop us. McGonagall stepped closer, her tone grave. If you go, be careful. And if anything feels wrong, if you sense anything unnatural, leave. Some secrets are best left undiscovered. Harry nodded, but I could tell from the determined set of his jaw that he had no intention of backing down. Neither did I. As we stepped toward the door, McGonagall added one last thing. And remember, Hogwarts protects those who protect it. Trust the castle. It may guide you when you least expect it. With those words echoing in our minds, Harry and I exchanged one final glance before slipping out into the dark corridors once more, our path set, our fate uncertain. The ritual had begun. The night air was crisp as Harry and I stepped out of the castle, leaving the warmth of Professor McGonagall's office behind. The moment we crossed the threshold into the open courtyard, a strong gust of wind rushed past us, rustling our robes and sending a shiver down my spine. The full moon hung high above us, casting an eerie silver glow over Hogwarts' ancient stone walls. Despite the beauty of the scene, there was a weight in the air, something unseen, yet deeply felt. Harry adjusted his grip on his wand, his green eyes scanning the darkness. Are you sure about this? He asked. McGonagall gave us a chance to walk away. I exhaled, gripping the old parchment in my hand. We didn't come this far just to turn back now, I replied. If this ritual can reveal something important, something Hogwarts itself is hiding, then I want to see it through. Harry gave a firm nod, though I could see the tension in his posture. Then let's go before we change our minds. We moved swiftly across the castle grounds, keeping to the shadows. Even though it was well past curfew, sneaking out at night wasn't new to us. The difference now was that we weren't just dodging Filch or Peeves. There was something darker at play, something watching. As we approached the ruins behind the castle, I felt the temperature drop further. The remnants of an ancient structure, long forgotten by students, stood before us. Moss-covered stones jutted out of the earth, some still holding their original formation, while others lay scattered from years of neglect. These were the foundations of the original Hogwarts, built centuries ago before the castle we knew had fully taken shape. The lunar crystal is supposed to reveal itself in the moonlight, I murmured, recalling McGonagall's words. Harry nodded, raising his wand. Lumos. A soft light illuminated the ruins, casting long shadows over the uneven ground. The stone walls seemed to absorb the glow, their damp surfaces reflecting only fragments of our small light. It felt as if the ruins were holding their breath, waiting for something. We stepped cautiously among the stones, our eyes darting in every direction. The parchment had said the ritual required 3 artifacts, and this was the first, if we could find it. Over here, Harry whispered, pointing toward an area where the moonlight shone the brightest. We made our way to the spot, and the moment we stepped into the full glow of the moon, something changed. The air vibrated softly, like a distant hum just beneath the surface of reality. My breath caught as I saw it. Embedded in the center of a broken pedestal was a crystal, its surface pulsing faintly with a silvery light. The lunar crystal, I whispered, awestruck. Harry reached forward cautiously. Do you think? Before his fingers could touch the crystal, a deep growl split the silence. We froze. The growl wasn't from an animal. It was guttural, raw, and filled with something far more sinister than mere hunger. Harry and I turned at the same time, wands raised. From the darkness beyond the ruins, a pair of glowing eyes emerged. Then another, and another. Wolves. But these weren't just any wolves. Their fur bristled unnaturally, and their eyes burned with an eerie amber glow. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. These weren't mere creatures of the forbidden forest. These were under Fenrir Greyback's influence. Harry barely had time to react before one of them lunged. Stupefy, he shouted. A bolt of red light struck the beast midair, sending it tumbling backward with a yelp. But the others advanced, their claws scraping against the stone ruins. Run! I yelled. Harry didn't need to be told twice. We darted toward the pedestal, but the wolves were fast. One of them leaped in front of us, cutting off our escape. Its snarl revealed long, curved fangs, saliva dripping from its maw. My pulse pounded in my ears. Instinct took over. Expulso! I cried. A shockwave burst from my wand, sending the wolf hurtling backward into a pile of rubble. But we weren't safe yet. More were closing in, their eyes locked onto us with an unnatural intelligence. Harry shot another stunning spell, but one of the wolves dodged it with terrifying speed. There's too many, he shouted. We needed the crystal. I turned back toward the pedestal, heart racing. If we could get it, maybe we could use its magic against them. I reached out, fingers trembling as they brushed the surface of the glowing stone. The moment I made contact, a powerful force surged through my body. It was like touching pure moonlight, cold, bright, and overwhelming. The crystal pulsed once, and suddenly, a blinding wave of silver light exploded outward, washing over the ruins. The wolves howled in agony as the energy enveloped them. One by one, they staggered, their snarls turning into whimpers before they retreated into the darkness. Within seconds, they were gone, vanishing as if they had never been there. The ruins fell silent once more. My breath came in short gasps as I stared at the crystal, still clutched in my trembling hand. The pulsing light within it had dimmed slightly, as if it had used its power to protect us. Harry bent over, catching his breath. That was close. I nodded, unable to form words just yet. The magic of the crystal was still coursing through me, leaving a strange tingling sensation in my fingertips. After a few more moments, Harry straightened, glancing around. "Greyback sent them," he muttered. "He knows what we're doing." A chill that had nothing to do with the cold night air settled over me. If Greyback was already aware of our search, it meant he would do anything to stop us. And if wolves had been his first move, I didn't want to imagine what came next. I tightened my grip on the lunar crystal and turned to Harry. "We have to move fast. We need to find the next artifact before he does." Harry nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "Then let's go." With one last glance at the now silent ruins, we turned and disappeared into the night. The ritual had begun, and there was no turning back now. The castle loomed in the distance as Harry and I hurried back across the grounds, the lunar crystal pulsing faintly in my grasp. The encounter with the wolves still sent shivers down my spine, but we had no time to stop and think. Greyback knew we were searching for the artifacts, and that meant he wouldn't stop until he either got them first or ensured we never found them. McGonagall said there were 3 artifacts, Harry murmured as we approached the castle walls. "1 down, 2 to go. But we don't even know where the next one is." I nodded, gripping the lunar crystal tightly. The parchment mentioned something about the path of the moon's shadow. I don't think it's talking about the ruins. It must mean somewhere else in Hogwarts. We slowed as we reached one of the lesser-used entrances to the castle, near the old stone archway that led to a long-forgotten corridor. Harry paused, glancing around before pushing open the heavy wooden door. It creaked as we slipped inside, the warmth of the castle instantly replacing the bitter cold outside. We stood in a narrow hallway, lined with ancient tapestries and worn suits of armor. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows across the floor, making the passage feel narrower than it actually was. My heart pounded as I clutched the crystal, feeling its warmth spread through my fingers. What if the crystal can help us find the next artifact? I wondered aloud. Harry turned to me. "Ow!" I hesitated before holding up the lunar crystal. The silver light within it shimmered, but nothing else happened. Maybe it reacts to the presence of the others? Harry frowned. Then we need to find a way to activate it. He took out the parchment we had found earlier and unrolled it, scanning the faded text once more. His eyes narrowed as he pointed to a line near the bottom. "Follow the moon's shadow beneath the castle, where light dares not shine." He looked up at me. "Beneath the castle, that means the dungeons." I swallowed hard. The dungeons of Hogwarts weren't just cold and eerie, they were a maze of forgotten tunnels and hidden chambers. Some passages hadn't been explored in centuries. "We should check the lower levels first," I said, glancing over my shoulder to make sure no one had followed us. "If the artifact is hidden somewhere deep underground, we'll need to move fast." Harry nodded, and without another word, we started moving. The dungeons of Hogwarts were silent, save for the occasional drip of water echoing through the stone corridors. The deeper we went, the colder it became. Even with lumos lighting our path, the shadows seemed thicker here, as though something was lurking just beyond the glow. "How far down does this place go?" I muttered, brushing away cobwebs as we turned another corner. Harry glanced at me. "Too far. The Marauder's map doesn't even show all the tunnels." Some passages are sealed off. I gripped my wand tighter. That wasn't exactly reassuring. As we continued, the walls became rougher, as if they had been carved out of the very foundations of the castle. The smell of damp stone filled the air, and a thin mist curled along the floor. Then, suddenly, the lunar crystal in my hand flickered. I stopped. "Harry, look." The silver light inside the crystal pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. It was reacting to something. Harry's expression hardened. "We're close." We quickened our pace, following the glow as it brightened. The corridor ahead split into two paths. One led further down into darkness, while the other curved sharply to the right. The lunar crystal flickered again, but instead of guiding us forward, its light stretched toward the wall. I frowned. "That's strange. It's not pointing to either path." Harry stepped forward, running his fingers along the cold stone. "Maybe it's hidden." I took a deep breath and raised my wand. Revelio. For a second, nothing happened. Then, faint blue runes shimmered across the surface of the wall. A hidden passage. Harry exchanged a glance with me before pressing his palm against the stone. There was a deep, grinding noise as the wall began to shift. Dust rained down as the hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow staircase descending even deeper underground. A chill ran down my spine. "I don't like this." Harry smirked faintly. "Since when do we ever go anywhere safe?" I sighed. "Fair point." We stepped through the entrance, the stone door sealing shut behind us. The staircase spiraled downward, and the further we went, the more unnatural the air became. It felt heavier, pressing against my chest with every step. The lunar crystal glowed brighter now, illuminating the walls with its silver sheen. Then we reached the bottom. A vast underground chamber stretched before us, filled with towering stone pillars covered in ancient carvings. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness, and the air hummed with unseen magic. And in the center of the room, resting on an ornate pedestal, was a small silver dagger. Harry and I stepped forward cautiously. The dagger's blade gleamed even in the dim light, its hilt adorned with intricate lunar patterns. There was no doubt in my mind this was the second artifact. But as we approached, the temperature dropped even further. A voice, low and guttural, echoed through the chamber. "You should not have come." A dark figure emerged from the shadows. Fenrir Greyback. His yellow eyes gleamed in the dim light, his sharp teeth visible even without a snarl. He stood tall, his tattered cloak barely covering the battle-worn robes underneath. Harry immediately raised his wand. Expelliarmus. Greyback deflected the spell with a wave of his hand. Tisk, TSK. Always so predictable, Potter. His voice dripped with mockery. I gritted my teeth and stepped forward. "Why do you want the artifacts? What are you trying to stop us from finding?" Greyback chuckled darkly. "You still don't understand, do you?" His eyes flicked to the lunar crystal in my hand. "The ritual you're so eager to complete, it doesn't just reveal secrets. It unlocks them." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Greyback took a step closer, his presence exuding raw menace. "Some things are buried for a reason," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And you are meddling in forces you cannot comprehend. My grip tightened on my wand. Greyback smirked. "But since you're so determined," he lunged. Harry and I barely had time to react as Greyback moved with unnatural speed. I dove to the side, rolling across the stone floor as his wand sent a burst of dark energy toward me. Harry countered with a powerful Protego, the shield charm barely holding against the force of Greyback's magic. "Get the dagger!" Harry shouted. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted toward the pedestal. Greyback snarled, his attention snapping toward me. But before he could strike, the lunar crystal flared. A blinding wave of silver light surged outward, slamming into Greyback. He roared in pain, stumbling back as the energy engulfed him. Seizing the moment, I reached the pedestal and grasped the dagger. The moment my fingers closed around it, the chamber trembled as if the very walls were responding to its presence. Greyback staggered, his eyes burning with fury. "This isn't over," he spat before vanishing into the shadows. Harry ran up beside me, breathless. "We need to get out of here. Now." I nodded, gripping the dagger tightly. 2 artifacts down. 1 more to go. And Greyback wasn't going to let us find it without a fight. The chamber walls still trembled from the magic that had been unleashed. My heart pounded in my chest as I clutched the silver dagger tightly in one hand, the lunar crystal still glowing faintly in the other. The air smelled of ancient dust and something darker, something lingering from Greyback's presence. He had retreated, but his words still echoed in my mind. "Some things are buried for a reason." Harry grabbed my arm, pulling me out of my thoughts. "We can't stay here. He might come back." I nodded, forcing myself to move. The chamber felt like it was closing in around us, the shadows creeping closer, but we didn't waste any time. With the dagger secured, we retraced our steps up the narrow staircase, moving as quickly as we could without tripping over the uneven stone steps. When we reached the top, the stone wall that had sealed the passageway loomed in front of us. I hesitated for only a second before pressing the lunar crystal against it. A pulse of silver light rippled outward, and with a deep groan, the wall slid open, revealing the dimly lit dungeon corridor beyond. Harry and I slipped through just as the door sealed shut behind us. The torches on the walls flickered as if disturbed by an unseen force, but the hallway remained empty. "Where now?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. Harry pulled out the parchment again, his brow furrowed as he examined the faded text. "We have 2 artifacts. The last one should be the Mirror of Selene, according to this." "The moon goddess," I murmured. "Makes sense, given the ritual's connection to lunar magic." Harry nodded. "But it says the mirror is kept where reflections hold the past. That could mean a place where memories are stored," I finished. My stomach twisted as realization dawned on me. The room of requirement. Harry's expression darkened. Greyback will be expecting us there. The weight of our task pressed down on me. We had come too far to stop now, but with each step, the danger grew. Greyback wasn't just trying to stop us, he knew something about this ritual that we didn't. We moved quickly, taking the long way around to avoid the more traveled corridors of the castle. The dungeon passageways were eerily quiet, every distant sound magnified against the stone walls. My grip tightened around my wand, my nerves on edge. As we approached the main staircases, I whispered, "Do you think McGonagall knew this would happen?" Harry glanced at me, his expression unreadable. She knew the risks. She always does. But she also knows us. She wouldn't have let us start this if she didn't believe we could finish it. I exhaled slowly, nodding. We reached the 7th floor in record time, our footsteps quick but silent against the cold stone floor. The familiar stretch of empty wall came into view, the entrance to the room of requirement. Harry and I exchanged a glance. "Ready?" he asked. "Not really," I admitted. "But let's do this anyway." Harry took a deep breath and stepped forward. Slowly, he walked past the wall 3 times, focusing on what we needed. We need the room of requirement to show us the mirror of Celine. The stone wall shimmered, then shifted. A wooden door materialized before us, its frame etched with faint silver runes. Harry reached for the handle. "Here we go." He pushed the door open, and we stepped inside. The room of requirement had taken the form of an ancient study, its high arched ceiling lined with hanging lanterns that bathed the room in soft golden light. Tall bookshelves stretched up into the darkness, filled with tomes covered in dust. At the center of the room stood a single ornate mirror, its surface framed with delicate carvings of lunar cycles. The mirror of Celine. I took a step forward, my reflection shifting in the glass. The mirror's surface wasn't normal, it shimmered like water, rippling as though something beneath was waiting to emerge. "That's it," I breathed. Harry glanced around the room. "It's too quiet." I felt it too. The moment was too easy, too still. We had fought for the first 2 artifacts, but this one was just waiting for us. Something was wrong. I turned back to the mirror. The carvings along the frame pulsed with a soft glow. Slowly, I reached out a hand. "Wait." Harry grabbed my wrist. I froze. A low, guttural growl echoed through the room. My blood turned to ice. From the shadows behind the bookshelves, a figure emerged. Fenrir Greyback. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 of his wolves flanked him, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. Greyback himself stood tall, his sharp teeth bared in a grin that sent a shudder down my spine. His presence was overwhelming, like the darkness itself had come alive. "Brave of you to come this far," he murmured, his voice like gravel. "But you should have listened to my warning." Harry raised his wand. "Step aside, Greyback." Greyback chuckled. "And let you unlock something that should remain buried?" "I think not." His wolves snarled, inching closer. "Why are you trying so hard to stop this?" I demanded. "What is it that you're so afraid of?" Greyback's expression darkened. "You're asking the wrong question, child. It's not what I fear, it's what you should fear." Without warning, he raised his wand. Confringo. A blast of fiery energy shot toward us. Protego. Harry deflected it, the spell bursting against the bookshelf behind us, sending burning fragments flying through the air. I spun, aiming my wand. Expulso. The shockwave sent one of the wolves crashing into a bookcase, but the other lunged at me. I barely dodged in time, rolling across the floor as its claws slashed through the air where I had just been. Harry fired a stunning spell at Greyback, but the dark wizard was fast, too fast. He dodged, retaliating with a curse that sent Harry skidding backward. Greyback turned to me. You don't understand what you're tampering with, he growled. The mirror of Celine doesn't just reveal the past, it unlocks it. There are things in Hogwarts history that were meant to be forgotten. My mind reeled. Unlocks the past? Greyback moved to strike again, but before he could, the mirror of Celine pulsed. A wave of silvery light erupted from its surface, flooding the room. Greyback staggered back, shielding his eyes. The wolves howled, retreating from the glow. I gasped as the light enveloped me. Images swirled in the mirror's depths, glimpses of Hogwarts as it once was. I saw figures in robes moving through corridors that no longer existed, ancient spells being cast, voices whispering of secrets long buried. And then, I saw something else. A shadow. A presence hidden within the castle. Something waiting to be found. The light faded as suddenly as it had come. Greyback, breathing heavily, glared at me. You set it in motion, he hissed. Harry pulled me back. We need to go. Now. I didn't argue. Clutching the dagger and the crystal, I turned away from the mirror. Greyback didn't try to stop us this time. He simply stood there, watching, his expression unreadable. As we ran from the room of requirement, my mind spun. What had we just seen? And more importantly, what had we just awakened? The corridors of Hogwarts blurred past as Harry and I ran, our footsteps echoing through the stone hallways. My heart pounded, not just from exertion, but from the weight of what had just happened. The mirror of Celine had shown me something vast and terrifying. A past buried so deep it had been erased from memory. And now, it was waking up. Beside me, Harry gritted his teeth. We have to get to McGonagall. I nodded, my fingers tightening around the lunar crystal and the silver dagger. With all three artifacts in our possession, we had everything needed for the ritual. But Greyback's warning haunted me. The mirror of Celine doesn't just reveal the past, it unlocks it. What had I done? We turned a sharp corner, nearly colliding with a group of Ravenclaw students heading toward the Great Hall. I barely registered their surprised glances as we pushed past them. We had no time to explain. The entrance to McGonagall's office loomed ahead. Harry and I skidded to a stop in front of the gargoyle statue that guarded it. Pumpkin pasties, Harry blurted. The gargoyle sprang to life, stepping aside to reveal the spiral staircase leading up to the headmistress's office. Without hesitation, we rushed up, the staircase moving beneath our feet. Harry didn't even knock before pushing the door open. Professor McGonagall sat behind her desk, her sharp eyes already locked onto us before we even stepped inside. It was as if she had been expecting us. You have them, she stated, her gaze flicking to the dagger in my hand. I swallowed hard. Yes. Her expression remained unreadable as she rose from her chair, moving toward us with a slow, deliberate pace. The office, lined with ancient books and enchanted artifacts, seemed eerily still. The portraits of past headmasters and headmistresses watched us intently, their usual murmuring absent. Dumbledore's portrait was among them, his twinkling blue eyes betraying his quiet concern. McGonagall's voice was calm but firm. Tell me what happened. I took a shaky breath and recounted everything, the journey to the ruins, the battle with Greyback, the hidden chamber in the dungeons, and finally, the encounter with the mirror of Celine. As I spoke, McGonagall's expression darkened, her fingers steepled in front of her. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. So it has begun. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? McGonagall moved to the bookshelf behind her desk, running her fingers along the spines of old tomes before selecting one. She placed it on the desk, flipping through the yellowed pages until she found what she was looking for. She turned the book toward us. The page depicted a familiar image, 3 artifacts arranged in a circle beneath the full moon, their power converging into a single beam of silver light. But below the illustration was a passage in old script. The lunar rite unveils the lost. But beware, for some things are meant to remain hidden. I felt the blood drain from my face. McGonagall fixed me with a solemn gaze. The ritual was never simply about harnessing the moon's energy. It is a key, one that opens doors long thought sealed. By collecting these artifacts, you have set that process in motion. I exchanged a glance with Harry. And what exactly did we just unlock? McGonagall hesitated. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in her expression. Over 1,000 years ago, during the time of the Founders, there was a secret buried beneath Hogwarts, she said carefully. A power so dangerous that even Salazar Slytherin himself feared it. The Founders sealed it away, ensuring that no one would ever disturb it again. I felt a cold weight settle on my stomach. What kind of power? McGonagall closed the book. A fragment of an ancient force, something older than Hogwarts itself. Something that could shift the very balance of magic. Harry straightened. Greyback knew about this, didn't he? That's why he's been trying to stop us. McGonagall nodded. Indeed. He may be ruthless, but he is no fool. He understands the risks of what lies dormant beneath this castle. I swallowed hard. And now, it's waking up. A heavy silence filled the room. McGonagall studied us both before finally speaking again. There may still be time to contain it. But you must act quickly. The full moon is tomorrow night, the only time the ritual can be completed. If you do not finish what you have started before then, the seal will break on its own. I felt a lump form in my throat. And if that happens? McGonagall's expression was grim. Then Hogwarts itself may not survive the consequences. The room suddenly felt much colder. Harry squared his shoulders. Then we do the ritual tomorrow night. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed that we were walking straight into something far more dangerous than we had ever imagined. But there was no turning back now. Taking a deep breath, I nodded. Tomorrow night. We finish this. McGonagall gave a single nod. Very well. But be warned, Greyback will not let you proceed unchallenged. He will do everything in his power to stop you. I tightened my grip on the lunar crystal. Let him try. Underscore 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 underscore. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Harry and I spent hours in the library, combing through ancient texts for any final clues about the ritual. The more we read, the more we realized how little we truly understood about what we were about to do. The ritual required all three artifacts, the lunar crystal, the silver dagger, and the mirror of Selene, placed in alignment beneath the full moon. But it also required something else. A sacrifice. Not a life, but something of great personal significance. Something tied to the caster's very essence. I stared at the passage, my fingers tightening on the page. What do you think that means? Harry frowned. Magic like this always comes with a cost. Maybe a memory? A piece of ourselves? I didn't like the sound of that. But we didn't have a choice. As the hours passed, the castle seemed to grow quieter, as if it too was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. And then, just before nightfall, a message arrived. A single piece of parchment slipped under the library door. I picked it up, my pulse quickening as I read the words scrawled in dark ink. Meet me in the astronomy tower. Midnight. Come alone. No signature. I turned to Harry, holding up the note. It's him. Harry's expression hardened. Greyback. He grabbed his wand. We're not going alone. A nervous knot tightened in my chest. Greyback wanted to talk, but why? After everything, why now? One thing was certain. Tomorrow night, everything would come to an end. One way or another. The cold night air bit at my skin as Harry and I climbed the spiraling staircase leading up to the astronomy tower. The castle was eerily silent, as if it too sensed what was coming. Each step felt heavier than the last, dread settling into my bones with every passing second. Harry's grip on his wand was tight, his jaw set in a determined line. This is a trap, he muttered. I nodded, my own wand ready in my other hand. Of course it is. Yet, we had no choice. The note had been clear, Greyback wanted to meet. And despite everything, I needed to know why. He had fought us every step of the way, but now, at the final hour, he had reached out. There had to be a reason. We reached the top of the tower. The full moon shone high above, casting silver light across the stone floor. The cold wind howled through the open archways, making my robes billow. And there, standing by the edge of the balcony, was Fenrir Greyback. Even in human form, he radiated danger. His ragged cloak barely concealed his muscular frame, and his wild, unkempt hair fell over piercing eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. He stood with his arms crossed, but there was no mistaking the tension in his stance. You came, he said, voice rough as gravel. I expected as much. Harry raised his wand. Cut the theatrics, Greyback. What do you want? Greyback chuckled darkly, shaking his head. Still as brash as ever, Potter. Always charging headfirst into things you don't understand. I stepped forward, ignoring the chill crawling up my spine. Then explain it to us. You've been trying to stop us from completing the ritual. Why? What are you so afraid of? Greyback's expression shifted, his amusement fading. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. You think you're unlocking power, he said. That this ritual is some forgotten piece of Hogwarts' past, something noble and magical. He stepped closer, his sharp eyes never leaving mine. You're wrong. A gust of wind whipped through the tower, but I barely noticed it. Greyback's voice lowered, his words slow and deliberate. The lunar rite wasn't designed to harness the moon's magic, he said. It was designed to contain something, to seal something away. The blood in my veins turned to ice. What? Greyback exhaled, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe how foolish we had been. You really don't know, do you? He turned toward the moon, his expression distant. Over 1,000 years ago, when the founders built this castle, they weren't just creating a school, he continued. They were building a prison. Harry stiffened. A prison? Greyback nodded. Something ancient, something that existed long before Hogwarts. They didn't create the lunar rite to use it, they created it to make sure no one ever used it again. A shiver ran down my spine. You saw it, didn't you? Greyback said, turning back to me. The vision in the mirror of Celine. The whispers of the past. You awakened it. I swallowed hard, memories of the mirror flashing in my mind. The shifting shadows, the glimpse of something vast and unknowable waiting just beneath the surface of history. You mean to tell us, Harry said slowly, that whatever the ritual unlocks isn't power, but something dangerous? Greyback's lips curled into a humorless smile. Not something. Someone. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. A being older than Hogwarts itself, Greyback continued. Something the founders feared enough to erase from history. Salazar Slytherin, Rowena Ravenclaw, Helga Hufflepuff, and even Godric Gryffindor, all of them worked together to lock it away. And they made sure no one could ever set it free. My grip on my wand tightened. And what is it? Greyback studied me carefully before answering. A forgotten entity. A creature of pure magic, born from the very fabric of the moon's influence on this land. A being with no allegiance, no morality, just hunger. I felt my breath hitch. Long ago, it walked these halls, Greyback said. It thrived on magic itself, consuming it, growing stronger with every spell cast in its presence. The founders barely managed to contain it, using the lunar rite as a means to seal it beneath the castle. And for centuries, that seal has held. My mouth was dry. Until now. Greyback nodded. Until you and Potter went poking around where you shouldn't have. A wave of nausea rolled through me. The ritual wasn't about harnessing the moon's power. It was about maintaining the prison. And we had just shattered the lock. Harry's expression darkened. So if we complete the ritual tomorrow night, will it fix this? Will it reinforce the seal? Greyback hesitated. That depends. On what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Greyback's gaze was intense. On whether you're willing to make the sacrifice it demands. I stiffened. The ritual doesn't just require the artifacts, he continued. It requires a piece of the caster's essence. A piece of their magic. Their very soul. My stomach twisted. But the text said. The texts only tell you what they want you to know, Greyback snapped. They don't tell you the truth. The ritual demands more than just objects, it demands something personal. Something irreplaceable. Harry stepped closer. And if we don't do it? Greyback's expression was grim. Then the seal will break completely. and the entity will wake. A heavy silence hung between us. I looked at the full moon, its light casting long shadows across the stone floor. Everything we had done, all the danger we had faced, had led to this. If we completed the ritual, we would have to give up something real, something permanent. But if we didn't, a shiver ran down my spine. Greyback sighed. I tried to stop you. I tried to keep the past buried. But now, there's no turning back. He stepped toward the edge of the tower, looking down at the castle below. You have one night left, he murmured. Make the right choice. Then, before we could react, he leapt from the tower. I rushed to the edge, my breath catching in my throat. But there was nothing. No body, no trace, only the swirling shadows below. He was gone. Harry exhaled sharply, gripping the balcony rail. That was insane. I swallowed hard. That was a warning. The full moon shone overhead, bathing the castle in silver light. Tomorrow night, we would finish what we started. One way or another. The night air was heavy with anticipation as Harry and I stood at the center of the Forbidden Forest clearing, the full moon looming directly overhead. This was the moment everything had been leading to. The ritual was prepared, the artifacts were placed precisely as the text had instructed, forming a perfect circle of power beneath the celestial glow. The lunar crystal gleamed with a faint silver radiance, pulsing in rhythm with the moon above. The silver dagger lay before us, its blade reflecting the ethereal light. And finally, the mirror of Selene stood tall in the heart of the formation, its glass surface eerily still, as if waiting. Harry shifted beside me, one grip tightly in his hand. Are you sure about this? His voice was low but firm. I let out a slow breath. We don't have a choice. Professor McGonagall's warning, Greyback's desperate last attempt to stop us, the visions in the mirror, everything pointed to the truth we had tried to ignore. This ritual wasn't about gaining power. It was about keeping something locked away. And we had already begun to undo that seal. A deep, resonant hum filled the air as the energy of the ritual began to stir. The ground beneath us vibrated, and the ancient symbols etched into the stone glowed with silvery blue light. The wind picked up, rustling the trees, whispering the secrets of forgotten times. Harry and I exchanged one final glance before I knelt before the artifacts. With steady hands, I reached for the silver dagger. The text had been clear, a sacrifice was needed. Not a life, but something of great personal significance. A piece of the caster's very essence. My hands trembled as I positioned the blade over my palm. You don't have to do this, Harry said quietly. I met his gaze, a sad smile playing at my lips. If we don't, Hogwarts, maybe even the whole wizarding world, will pay the price. He swallowed but nodded, understanding. I took a deep breath and pressed the dagger against my skin. A sharp pain shot through my palm as a thin line of crimson welled up. The moment my blood touched the lunar crystal, the magic reacted. A surge of energy erupted through the clearing. The symbols flared brightly, casting the entire area in an eerie glow. The mirror of Selene rippled as if its surface were liquid, reflecting not just our images, but something beyond, shadows of the past, echoes of forgotten voices. Then, the ground split. A tremor rocked the earth beneath us, and a deep, guttural groan reverberated from somewhere below. It wasn't the sound of stone shifting. It was the sound of something waking up. Harry grabbed my arm. "Something's coming." I barely had time to process his words before the air ripped open in front of us. A jagged fissure formed in the space between the mirror and the artifacts, swirling with inky darkness. And from within it, a figure emerged. It wasn't human. At first, it was nothing but shadow, an amorphous void with no defined form. But as it stepped forward, the darkness began to take shape. Limbs stretched outward, impossibly long, with clawed fingers that curled unnaturally. Its body flickered between solid and intangible, as if it existed in multiple realities at once. Then, it opened its eyes. A pair of glowing silver orbs, cold, endless, and ancient. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The entity studied us, its gaze sweeping over the artifacts, the circle, then finally locking onto me. "You have called," it whispered, its voice echoing as if spoken from the depths of the universe. "And now, I am awake." The energy in the air became suffocating, pressing down on my chest like an unbearable weight. The presence of the being was wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. It exuded no malice, no rage, only hunger. I realized then that Greyback had been right. This thing didn't care about good or evil. It had no morality, no allegiance. It only consumed. Harry pulled me back, wand raised. "We need to finish the ritual. Now." The entity tilted its head, its gaze flickering toward the mirror of Celine. The surface of the mirror rippled once more, and for the first time, I saw it. Not just a reflection, but a glimpse into the past. The founders of Hogwarts, standing exactly where we were now, their expressions grim as they performed the original lunar rite. They had fought this thing before, and they had sealed it away at great cost. McGonagall's words echoed in my mind. A piece of the caster's essence. I understood now. It wasn't just about blood. It wasn't just about magic. It was about giving up a part of yourself that you could never get back. Harry turned to me. "What do we do?" I clenched my jaw, wiping the blood from my palm onto the lunar crystal once more. The energy shifted, responding to my intent. "We bind it," I said. Raising my wand, I spoke the incantation I had memorized from the texts. "Lumen Lunaris, Carcer Aeterna." A blast of silver light shot outward, surrounding the entity in a shimmering barrier. It recoiled, its form flickering as if it were being pulled in multiple directions at once. It resisted. The hunger in its gaze intensified, and I felt a pull, a force trying to take something from me. Memories flashed through my mind, my first day at Hogwarts, my happiest moments, the people I loved. It was trying to consume my very identity. I screamed, pouring every ounce of my will into the ritual. "You don't belong here." Harry, seeing my struggle, stepped forward, gripping my shoulder. "You're not doing this alone." He raised his wand and joined the incantation. "Lumen Lunaris, Carcer Aeterna." The mirror of Celine reacted violently, its surface shattering into 1,000 pieces, each fragment reflecting only darkness. The entity let out a sound that was neither a scream nor a roar, something unnatural, something impossible to describe. The silver light expanded, the ritual circle burning brighter. And then, with a final, deafening crack, the entity was pulled back into the rift. The fissure collapsed. The magic dissipated. The night fell silent. I gasped for air, collapsed into my knees. Harry fell beside me, his breath ragged. The artifacts lay still, their glow completely gone. The ritual was over. The seal had been restored. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, Harry let out a weak chuckle. Well, that was terrifying. I gave a breathless laugh, still trying to process what had just happened. Understatement of the century. We sat there in the clearing, staring at the moon above. The full moon. And for the first time all night, it felt peaceful. The danger had passed. The ancient hunger was sealed once more. And Hogwarts was safe. For now. The night grows quiet once more. The echoes of ancient magic fade into the stillness, leaving only the soft glow of the moon above. Hogwarts stands safe once again, its secrets hidden away for another time. The shadows retreat, and peace settles over the castle like a gentle lullaby. You have walked through mystery, faced the unknown, and found the light beyond the darkness. Now, let the quiet embrace you. Let the story drift away like a dream at the edge of sleep. Take a deep breath, let go of the night's adventure, and allow yourself to rest. The moon will watch over you until morning comes.